Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling something that's going to really stretch our brains. We're going to be looking at CSpace, and just a heads up, it's a pretty out there idea. Basically, it challenges like everything we normally think about physics of the universe.
Yeah, it really shakes things up.
So strap in, because this one is a wild ride. But before we get too far, let me quickly introduce the amazing expert who's joining us today. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to dive into this. CSpace is definitely one of those ideas that gets you thinking about reality in a whole new way.
So, all right, let's set the stage here a little bit. CSpace is basically this model of reality that says the entire universe, like everything, might be made of just one single material. And this material, it's not just sitting there. It's like a constantly changing, evolving entity. We dug up this fascinating text for this deep dive, and it really explores this whole concept in depth. And the text actually suggests that the universe might not even operate on laws the way we normally think of them.
Right. It's not about following a set of rules. It's more like the universe itself is the rules, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm starting to get it, but let's break it down even more. So in CSpace, we're not talking about a bunch of separate objects like stars and planets, all following these laws of physics, right?
Exactly. It throws that whole idea out the window.
Instead, it's saying the universe is one giant, unified thing.
One complete, self-contained system.
Like a massive machine, but made of just one material.
Precisely. The text calls it complete machinery, which I think is a pretty powerful image.
Yeah, complete machinery. That really makes you think. So hold on. If it's all one material, one machine, how does that even work? Like, how do we get all this diversity, all these different things in the universe?
Well, think of it like this. Imagine a pond.
A pond. Okay.
The water itself is one entity, right?
Right, it's all just water.
But you get waves, ripples, even droplets forming. They all have their own unique shapes, behavior.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
But they're all still just expressions of that same underlying water.
So you're saying the universe is like the pond, and all the stuff in it, the stars, the planets, us, we're like the waves and ripples.
Exactly. Different forms arising from that same fundamental material.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. Yeah. But, okay, if everything comes from this one material, this complete machinery, does that mean everything is, like, predetermined? What about free will? Do we even have a choice in anything?
That's the big question, isn't it? And, it's something philosophers and scientists have been debating for centuries.
Yeah, I mean, if everything is just playing out according to the properties of this one material, where does our free will fit in?
Well, CSpace actually offers a pretty interesting perspective on that. It suggests that even in a system where everything is ultimately determined by the initial properties of this material, free will might still be possible.
Whoa, really? How does that work? I mean, doesn't that seem like a contradiction?
Well, the key here is that the variations within this complete machinery, things like humans, they don't have these rigid boundaries.
Okay, so they're not totally fixed.
Right, their future isn't completely set in stone because they're constantly interacting with the larger system, and that interaction is always evolving.
So even though the overall behavior of the universe might be determined by the properties of this one material, there's still some room for individual agency within that framework. Like, our choices can still make a difference.
That's the idea. It's subtle, but it suggests that free will might not be incompatible with this idea of a deterministic universe.
Okay, I gotta admit, that's a huge relief. I was starting to get a little freaked out about the whole no free will thing.
I can understand that. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It definitely is. The author of the text we're looking at, they really want other physicists to take this CSpace idea seriously. They basically throw down the gauntlet and say, if you don't agree with this model, come up with a better one.
Yeah, they're not afraid of a challenge.
Not at all. They're like, if you think you can explain the universe better as complete machinery with all its properties and behavior, let's hear it.
It's a bold move, but it highlights a really important point about CSpace. It's an attempt to simplify our understanding of the universe. Traditional physics theories, they tend to get incredibly complex.
Yeah, trying to explain all the different forces, particles, interactions.
Exactly. And CSpace takes a completely different approach. It says, what if it's all just one thing? One entity with a minimal set of properties that determine everything else.
I mean, it's definitely a different way of thinking about things. But it does have a certain elegance to it, a kind of simplicity.
Absolutely. And for some scientists, that's really appealing.
But what about the limitations of our scientific methods? I mean, we rely on observation, measurement, experimentation. Can those methods even work if the universe is fundamentally just one unified thing?
That's a really crucial point. And the author actually addresses it directly. They argue that the scientific method, as powerful as it is, relies on this distinction between the observer and the observed.
Right. We separate ourselves from what we're studying.
But if CSpace is correct, that separation might be artificial.
So we might be missing something fundamental about reality because of the way we approach studying it.
It's a possibility, and a pretty thought-provoking one, I think.
It definitely is. This whole concept is really making me rethink some things. Okay, so just to sum things up for everyone, CSpace is suggesting a pretty radical shift in perspective. It's saying, don't think of the universe as a bunch of separate objects governed by these external laws. Instead, think of it as one single entity, driven by its own inherent properties. It's like a self-contained system, constantly changing and evolving according to its own internal logic. And that had some pretty wild implications for how we understand everything, from free will to the scientific method itself.
Absolutely. It's a completely different framework for understanding reality.
Yeah, it really is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to ponder. If the universe is this single, self-changing entity, what does that mean for consciousness? Is consciousness something that emerges from those inherent properties too? And if so, what does that say about our place in this grand, unified scheme of things? It's a big question, but I think it's one worth thinking about. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into CSpace. It's been a wild ride, but I hope you found it as thought-provoking as I did. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep searching for those deeper truths.
Absolutely, and thanks again for having me. It's been a great discussion.
It really has. Thanks again. And to all our listeners out there, we'll see you on the next deep dive. Bye for now.
Take care, everyone.